So, what is this romantic obsession about? And is it as dramatic as it sounds? Actually, not at all, because most of us have tried it to one extent or another. It's that feeling when it really hurts to let go, and it's that feeling when it can be really difficult to separate yourself from others. It is when you don't feel like being alone, and you would rather be with your partner all the time, or if you get worried if they're doing something on their own, it is when me and you becomes we, and there is an enmeshment, a sort of a growing together as one happening in your relationships. I thought I'd take the time to quickly talk to you about 3 ways that my clients in emotional freedom really often mention to me that they feel like they lose themselves within relationships. Now, this is my interpretation of these particular 3 ways, but I've seen it so many times that I thought I'd share it with you. And one of the first ways we tend to lose ourselves when we're trying to navigate in being intimate and close with another human being, and this does not have to be sexually close. I'm not talking about intimacy equaling sex, but emotional intimacy. One of the first ways when we're trying to navigate what can be those murky waters is people pleasing. So number 1 would be people pleasing. When we end up saying yes when we may really be feeling no. Sounds familiar? You know, we've all tried it. I mean, one time or another. So there's no shame or no judgment in this. This is a very normal thing that happens to a lot of people, that it can become very increasingly difficult to figure out, what do I actually want? What are my partner's wants and what are my wants? And is it okay to speak up? Is it okay for me to assert my needs and my wants, or does that make me feel unsafe? Does it make me afraid of judgment? Or does it make me maybe afraid of a reaction from my partner that is unwanted? So the people pleasing it can become this really like toxic swamp of having difficulty separating ourselves, living our own lives. You know, the pleasing becomes, what do we want to do? How do you like it? And if we were to translate that into a sexual relationship, that can become a really big problem. Because if we please and give instead of also take or receive, an imbalance sets in. And when we're pleasing other people out of either fear or discomfort or simply not having enough practice in being assertive, those people find it hard to figure out where exactly they stand with us. So we're kind of digging our own grave, to use a very dramatic term, if that makes any sense, because we are disabling the standing in our own truths function in our relationships. And sometimes what we crave the most really is to have that in our partner. I know what you stand for. I know what you're all about. You're honest. You're clear. But see, if we don't start by doing that ourselves, then that bad shit starts happening, where it becomes a spiral, you know, that gets tighter and tighter. So I think let's go to point number 2, because that's equally important. And it is abandoning your previous life. I think most people have tried that as well, that we get so enmeshed or so in love or so caught up in a new relationship, or maybe over time, that we start abandoning friends we love hanging out with, that hobby, that sport we used to play, or that, you know, if we loved going to the theater, to the movies, concerts, whatever it is, we start abandoning parts of our previous life that was actually a solid part of our identity. That also makes it increasingly difficult to maintain my identity. Who am I? What do I stand for? What do I enjoy? And am I telling my soul that I am worth my own time and respect? Because in every little decision we make throughout life, we're sending messages to our core and our soul. And imagine if the messages, the little pills, whether it is vitamins or poison, that we're sending up to our soul, is conveying the message that I'm not important. Imagine how unsafe life then starts feeling, how frustrating, how much resentment we start growing. Because when we prioritize others over ourselves, it has always a bonus, or we wouldn't choose it, but it also has a cost. And the cost is that it comes with, of course, not taking care of yourself the way you probably should when it comes to self-love and nourishing your soul and your body and your mind. But it also comes with resentment, because we start resenting the fact that we keep giving and giving and giving. And this is where we often get caught in a trap where we don't see that we are part of creating and maintaining this system of being in a relationship with somebody. So it's very important stuff if what we truly crave is love, equality, a passionate and intimate relationship with somebody, is to figure out, where am I tripping myself up? And so one of the ways that is also essential to look at is confusing assertiveness with being controlling. Assertiveness is when you speak for you and about you. You're stating your needs and wants, you're communicating clearly without asking questions, making suggestions, or giving advice. So instead of going, wouldn't you just love to go to the cinema? Or don't you? Oh, it would do you so good with some vegetarian tonight. Or whatever the suggestions or the ideas can be, then you facilitate the change you want by saying, I would love to go to the cinema tonight. I would love to watch the new Fast and Furious. I would love to have vegetarian tonight because it does my tummy so good, or whatever it is. Speaking up from you. But see, the thing is, we tend to confuse assertiveness with being controlling or being selfish or narcissistic even, because we may have a wrong programming with us, or a tricky programming that tells us that if I speak for me and about me, then I'm being selfish. Then I'm all about me, it's all about... But there's a big difference. There's a big difference between asserting yourself and then putting yourself as a superior above everybody else. Those two things are not the same at all. Prioritizing yourself and asserting yourself is the first step in allowing other people to do exactly the same. And that's when the magic can happen. So I have a couple of tips for how you deal with this and how you change those things in your life to move towards the relationships that you probably crave. I know I used to crave them, oh my God, like hell, because I was in such a dysfunctional relationship, actually several in my life. And it was very sort of self-damaging, destructing. It was bordering on self-harm. So my story is part of what motivates me so much to share these things with you, is because I know what it feels like to feel very confused, to feel anxiety, sometimes depression, which in most of this work is just the side effect of what you're doing to yourself. It is your body and your mind's way of telling you, I don't feel safe in the way you are treating yourself and letting others treat you right now. So there are several things we can do, and I'm going to give you the full list of tips and all the tools you need to start really honestly and truly looking at this and getting in touch with that core of love that is within you, that you don't need to go out and get from anybody else, even though it feels like it. On the talk that I'm doing with Andrea, I'm going to throw the link in here because we're going to talk about this romantic obsession, when it hurts to let go, and in general about emotional freedom. But I'll give you a tip right now, and it is one that my clients often receive with a bit of, huh? What did you say? And it's about saying no. It can be very scary to say no and to trace a limit if we're not used to it, if we don't feel comfortable with it, and especially if we don't feel like we deserve it. So saying no comes in baby steps. And one of the ways I teach all the people I work with to do that is to start by saying no to everything. Just a small, gentle no to everything. And you may follow that up with I may go home and check my schedule, but for now it's no. Or I may go home and, talk to my partner, but for now it's no. Because what we need is a buffer of time. We need a little space in which we can get in touch with ourselves and figure out, okay, am I in the middle now of not asserting myself, people pleasing, abandoning what's actually important to me because there's actually something else that I would rather do? Do I already have enough work on my plate? Do I even have time and energy for this? And when we buy ourselves that little buffer, then we can get back to people and say, hey, listen, if that's still an option, I would love to come, or we can maintain the no that we said in the first place. But by training the understanding that when you say no in one direction, you're really saying yes in another. So when I say no to working late in my office with some of my colleagues here, for instance, what I'm really doing is I'm saying yes to having dinner with my son who spent most of the week with his buddies, and I really want to see him tonight. When I say no to going to a dance evening with a couple of really cool friends, that invited me, when I say no to that, what I'm really doing is I'm saying yes to laying on my sofa watching Netflix because I've had a very busy week and that's what I feel like right now. And then I may go dancing some other time. When I say no to watching Dunkirk or whatever in the movies, what I'm really saying yes to is watching Fast and Furious because I like it better. So it's those little tricks where we get we shift the focus from the no to something which can feel intimidating to the everything I'm saying yes to. And what we want to learn is to say yes to ourselves. Say yes to me. Say yes to you. So saying no to everything might spark a reaction from people around you and they go, hey, why are you, every time I ask you something, you say no, or you just instantly blurt out no. And then you can follow that up with an answer that goes something along the lines of, you know what, I'm figuring out where exactly my boundaries are, or I'm working on being better at managing my time, or I'm working at being better at figuring out what I actually want to do, because I've been very bad at saying no to things or whatever. I tend to say yes because I'll tell you why this is important. Because almost everybody knows this feeling. So instead of feeling attacked and like this is a hostile no, this is, in my experience, both personally and professionally, sparks so much recognition in the person you're talking to, and often also compassion and respect, because you're taking yourself seriously. So when you explain very shortly, because no explanation is needed, but that might make you feel more comfortable with it, that you are working on figuring out what is right for you. And it helps you to say no initially, and then you may come back afterwards, but right now it's no. That will unlock one of the doors in your life that has been slammed shut and triggered into all of these different behaviors I just talked about. So that was a little bit about the 3 ways we tend to lose ourselves in relationships. And I suggest join me and Andrea. It's going to be a really awesome talk. I hope to see you in there. We're going to dive into this whole, what happens to us when we love other people and how do we remain us. I hope to see you in there. Bye.